This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum and Tonya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward and happy Twixtmas.
I always get confused when you say that.
So you're thinking about, are you a left Twix or a right Twix, and you went to the whole marketing campaign for the candy bar?
Yes, it does. I just get thrown off. Sometimes you throw the terms out there that it's like you're trying to get me back for all the insurance jargon, and I just lock up.
Last year, thinking back to our Twixtmas episode, if we had to describe it with a Twix, we were probably a little more caramel, a little more smooth than the last episode of this year, which seems a little peanut buttery nuttier.
Flaky comes to mind with the marketplace. And did this carrier flake out on us? Did these customers flake out on us? Have my people flaked out on me? Am I flaking out on myself? There's so many ways to go down this path that I don't even know where to start. It's been quite a year, and I'm rarely like this. I don't buy into this normal kind of statement, but I'm normally not ready for the year to be gone and be done with. I'm ready for 2023 to be done with.
Are you really? That is so unlike you.
It is so different than my natural state, but there's nowhere to go but up. And so I'm ready to move on and just say, let's chalk this one up to some learning. Let's not forget what we've learned and what's happened, but let's move on to the next chapter.
Which is bizarre because really and truly, most of our agencies had a very successful year financially.
Yes, and have done so, and that would include our organization, but it was a hard-earned financial year. Was it an easy 100,000 or was it a really hard 100,000? And that would be one of those kind of areas to me. And sometimes people can make the same amount of money, but they make it in a hardened environment versus a softer or an easier environment.
It was hard. Let's just say it was a hard environment.
Probably only about half a rear end left for most of our agents. The other half has been chewed off by someone. That's just where we are and how we sit today. And
I went to left and right Twix and left and right cheek. Like, which one's gone now?
One of them's gone. Everybody's got at least one cheek gone. Guarantee you that.
I was in a store before Christmas and the card said, all I want for Christmas is some semblance of normalcy. And that may be our New Year's Eve wish, our hope for 2024 is that this new normal that we have been in maybe doesn't stay normal for this entire year.
I don't love parts of the new normal. There are some good things that are part of the new normal. There are quite a few not so good things that are part of the new normal. And I really do not believe I'm just being the old guy when I say that. There are some fads going on, and there are some things in society that we can hope and pray that are truly just fads, and they will leave us and they will not come back. Big hair don't care from the 80s.
Bring back the big hair. Bring back, of course, my big hair never went.
But there's things like parachute pants. I don't need them to come back. I'm okay with that.
Oh, whoa. Let's just go there. So I was in Dillard's this week and they had an evening gown that the bodice was velvet and the ball gown skirt was made from parachute pant fabric. And it was the most atrocious thing that I have ever seen in the formal wear department.
Yeah, see, just don't need it to be here. It's okay if I never have to deal with that type of thing ever. That's not good news that you're telling me that. But there are certainly things within our industry that we hope are fads. We hope that we can get our head around this entire inflationary cycle, that things maybe can reach a new normal or fall into a new normal category that makes a lot of sense. There's going to have to be some major adjustments for it to do that. I don't think it's sustainable that it can just always be about price increase. That's not going to sustain itself for our industry.
We don't want it to be cutting commissions either. Let's just put that out there.
No, and that's the natural carrier thing, is that premiums are going up. We can cut a point or two here and there. The agents are still making more in terms of dollars. That's definitely not a good way to look at it if I'm a carrier executive. There's also the reality that agents have to be leaner and agents have to be better. I understand that cuts both ways and that the marketplace is going to somewhat dictate that. And we've been seeing that for a decade and a half, couple of decades maybe, where different carriers would take different approaches. But I also know that the cycle's going to shift and we're going to go soft again at some point. And when that happens, the question is, do you really want to have to go back to your agent force and say, we shouldn't have done that? What's better, to run the infinite game and play the infinite game with your distribution channel, or sour your distribution channel and have to go back hat in hand and apologize? I love the even kill approach. I'm well known for that in my small circle of a handful of people.
What's amazing to me as you talk about the soft market is, as this hard market started and as it exacerbated, I did a lot of research, reading articles, and it was so interesting that so many of the same challenges that agents had during the soft market were the same challenges that agents were having in the hard market. And so maybe this really is our normal. We just had some blip time in there where it was easy for things to be on an even keel.
It was easy for a while from the agency side. We could get access to the markets. We had capacity. The markets had capacity. And so we could continue just to write an endless amount of new clientele to grow our books. We now are understanding what it's like for a manufacturer to not be able to get raw materials because capacity has shrunk significantly. That's the piece that has to get fixed, is capacity. And the only way that capacity can improve, in my view, is that coverage probably has to change. And that's always the cycle. The cycle has always been price goes up, then coverage has to reduce because price going up can't sustain itself indefinitely. And so there has to be some kind of alternative that coverage has to shrink. We've seen it time and time again within the market. And exactly how that coverage needs to be adjusted is to be determined at this point. Still being debated, still being discussed. Until that time happens, then we are going to continue to see this price increase environment, inflationary driven environment within the insurance pricing sector, just because there has to be a way at some point to get the right rate for risk. And we can't if the coverage stays at the level. If the coverage continues to stay at the level that we're doing it at, we can't necessarily get the right rate for risk. So that's a problem. In property, the property side of things, the homeowner side of things. Auto, while there's some place all over the board, that's not abnormal. There are some carriers that are back in the black on that are getting profitable on the auto side, and there's some other carriers who are not. There's normalcy actually in carriers being at different places. Some are better at pricing to risk than others. That's going to level itself out, and the carriers that are going to figure it out are going to stay in business in that line. And the carriers that don't figure it out may just call it quits in that line or do something altogether different.
What would be your advice on the idea of, I have no idea what I was going to say.
I would say write it down. Then you won't forget it.
What would be your advice to the agent who is ready to just kick 2023 in the booty honey, de-inflate the other cheek, and move on to a successful 2024?
It's going to be okay, number one. The advice is, if you get too high or you get too low, then it is hard to get momentum from either side of those pendulums. If you're too high, then the crash feels devastating. If you're just too high and riding high and then something, you crash and burn, it's a hard crash and burn. At the same time, if you are just struggling every day and just at the bottom depths of despair, it is extremely hard to get up and do the work every day. Finding that balance between what it is that you do every day. Find if you need to mix this up, if you need to find a hobby, if you need to slow down your plan, and maybe you're not going to sell your agency for $1 gazillion in 5 years, and instead maybe build an agency on a gradual growth plane, then you might find that backing up a little bit and taking a little slower growth rate isn't a terrible thought. That your mindset, your health is going to be more important than the end of the day, than the valuation in a couple of years. We pay so much attention to the M&A market within our agencies, within our private equity entered the insurance agency space several years ago. It's ruined us in a way, and it's put a damper on building long-term successful agencies that are rewarding for lifestyle and balance and all of those awesome things that the business itself is capable of. We need to reset with the mindset of, you know what, maybe that's not the end goal. If you set the end goal, make money or achieve a certain valuation within a certain period of time, you're going to miss the journey. It's saying my kids are going to go to an Ivy League school, and you spend all this time getting them ready for an Ivy League school. And then you look up and they're grown and you're like, what happened to their childhood? You don't want to miss the journey. And I feel like that's something that we can latch on to coming out of 2023. It was really bad, but guess what? We remember that journey because we remember the butt chewings and we remember the frustration and we always remember the things that are hard.
The phrase that I most remember coming out of 2020 was in these unprecedented times. And I just remember thinking, okay, if I was still in the radio business, there is no way that I would let any one of my clients or really cut a commercial that had that phrase in it because I just wanted to throw something against a wall every time I heard it. And what's interesting is this year, I feel that way every time somebody has complained about the hard market in the last 2 to 3 months. I know it's hard, but at some point we have to just embrace it and say, okay, this is it. How can I make this work for me? How can I make this work for my people? And how can I make this work for my clients? And not to sound like a Pollyanna when I say that, but I'm tired of people complaining. Let's figure out what makes it work for us.
There's a video lesson on iforward.com that you can check out from the Hoosman brothers, and it's called Don't Yell at the Wind. It's a great thing for end of year mindset, rechannel. And not to give away the full scope here, because I want you to go watch it and I want you to go subscribe to that lesson. But those guys figured it out going through a lot of trip and falls and building and churning of producers every now and then figured it out. And now they're just on this really gradual growth trend. And they'll say their life is better than it was 8 to 10 years ago. And the whole concept is control what you can control. And there's so many things out of 2023 that agents can't control. We can't control the price increase. We can't control the capacity problem. But as independent agencies and independent business owners, we do have choices. No matter what, we always have choices. And even when the choice is slim, we still have choices. And so not yelling at the wind, because the wind is going to keep blowing. That's the whole point. If you don't yell at the wind, then your brain can rest a little better. Your attitude will be better. You might wake up happier in the morning instead of waking up frustrated or aggravated or whatever. There's a mindset shift that we are not dependent on one carrier or one customer or one line of business necessarily. We can do all kinds of different things that we need to do that the captive channel can't do, that call centers can't do, direct channels can't do. Not yelling at the wind type of mindset is important going into a new year, every year, especially coming out of 2023.
Looking ahead at 2024, you're probably writing your New Year's resolutions now, right? And I am just not a huge fan of demanding regimes. It's one of those things that people set these big, hairy, audacious revolutions. They're going to go to the gym every day. They're going to change their eating habits. They're going to change the way they do business. And they make all of these promises to themselves that are ginormous. And then within 10 to 14 days, they've let themselves down. Stop doing that. Make one change. If you want to do that, make one change or make a few tiny habit changes. And that's so much easier to be successful at making changes if you're not trying to change everything. One of the things that when Shane's wife, Julie, and we do a boot camp together, and we learned to change our fork habits first. And then after we'd changed our fork habits, we learned to move, and then we learned to add weight training. And it wasn't a go in and change all of these things at one time. And for some reason, so many of us think that just because this new year is flipping over, the new year, new you thing is going to happen. Pick one thing if you want to make a change, preferably something small, and build on it.
It's always about the shortcut. That's what we do in our agencies sometimes, and we just can't. We have to understand that anything of significance is probably hard, and anything of significance is probably going to require a lifestyle change. Now, when I say lifestyle change, understand that I eat behind my wife in the sense that I eat what she eats. But I have also come to the understanding that I'm still going to go out to eat at lunch in the community, see people, and I'm going to go have lunch with friends. And I'm going to do this on a regular basis because lunchtime is my social hour. I'm not going to make my friend go to eat a salad every day or every week. And I'm not going to make my other friend go eat this other thing when they're not doing that. So when I go or they drive and they choose the restaurant that week, I'm going to eat what I'm going to eat. And my point of saying that is I understand that my body is not going to be exactly at the level that my wife's body is in the way that she does things. And my lifestyle change is that I went about 80%. I've gone about 80%. She went 100%. I'm 100% okay with that. I'm 100% okay that I went 80% and she went 100%. And I am living in that 80%. The lifestyle change is that I went 80% better than where I was. It was not I had to go 100% and I only made it to 80%. I made an intentional decision that I'm going to have a little slightly different way of this lifestyle change than my wife, this other person. That's another thing to think about here. Don't do what somebody else is doing just because somebody else is doing it or they look good or they lost whatever number of pounds. Do what you need to do to make you feel better, to make your body better, to make your mind better. That translates into our businesses really well.
Let's stay with that topic. It's so interesting when you have made a lifestyle change like this and people make comments about, oh my gosh, you look so great. And then they ask the question, what are you doing?
Yeah. The answer to the majority of the citizenry, everybody wants the quick fix. Everybody wants the shot, the pill, the whatever. And that's not a lifestyle change. And it's not forever. You're now dependent on something. That's the thing that people want to know. They really want to know what's the really quick secret thing that you've done to get what you are.
Because the response is always going to be, oh, that's terrible. That's not sustainable. You shouldn't do that. That doesn't work. Obviously, it does work. It does work for me. It does work for Julie. People do the same thing in their agencies. They go to someone they think is successful, they think are profitable, and they say, tell me the secret. The person tells you their secret. Now, it may not fit your agency, but you're going to try to shove a square peg into a round hole, or you're going to tell them all of the reasons why that doesn't work. I love wise counsel that is biblical. But also figure out what works for you and stick with it rather than trying to always throw the new stuff in. That's one of the reasons that this lifestyle change has been successful for me is I've been able to cancel out the noise that's out there. This new diet, this new workout, this new whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I'm so glad that works for them, but I figured out what works for me. If we can think about that in 2024, it could really make a huge difference in our agencies. What works for me?
I saw a quote the other day that caught my attention. It resonates really well. We are drowning in information while starving for wisdom. In the information age, which I would say we've been in for a couple of decades now, we're not going to digest less information into the future. It's only going to speed up and become more. That does not mean that you need to take that information and do something with it. Sometimes you need to ignore it. And the comparison game, to bring that into play here, is exactly what you're talking about. Just because someone else is doing it that way and having success doesn't mean that you're going to be successful doing it that way. Your agency, is it urban? Is it suburban? Is it metro? Is it micropolitan? Is it rural? Is it small town? Is it Main Street? Do you have an office? Do you not have an office? Are your people scattered? Are they all in one building? There's so many things that you can think about. And I didn't even go down the path of, are you personal lines? Do you have a general mix of personal commercial? Are you commercial lines focused? Do you offer benefit plans? Do you do life and health? I can just keep going and going. And the reality of it is you have to decide. And an old classic book of mine that I read every year about this time, I'm reading it next week, is Raving Fans. Raving Fans is a customer service book, and I love it, and I read it every year. One of the first things in Raving Fans is it says you have to decide what you want. This world of information drowning and starving for wisdom is making it harder and harder for us to discern and disseminate and make good decisions around exactly what it is that we want. We created an agency network that modeled the transition from captive or producer, personal lines focused agents from one or two different channels into the independent agency channel. That's at its core what we did. We don't pretend to go out there and go, we are here to be your commercial lines agency network specialization organization, whatever. That's not what we offer. That's not what we throw out there in the marketplace. There are some really good agency networks that are very commercial lines focused, and they're for the multi-generational commercial lines focused agencies. But when you're coming out of a captive carrier or you're coming out of a producer role, most of the time, those are personal lines type agencies. When you go to jump into the independent agency space, you need to latch on to a very personal lines driven organization because they're going to speak your language. They're going to be able to help you navigate that transition. That's what we did. And we didn't pretend to do something different. We spent our first 10 years looking across the street, looking across town, across state, and saying, we want to match that organization. We want to be like them. How can we be more like them? And then when we figured out our way, we made a decision that we were going to do it our way. And this is what we were going to look like. And from that day forward, things got easier.
So new year, new you, in the comparison game. How do you see 2024 comparing to 2023?
Unfortunately, it's like leaving the state of Eastern Texas and going into Western Louisiana. Other than the Sabine River, you really didn't notice anything different. Unfortunately, the first half of 2024 isn't going to feel good. And I'm sorry to say that. It's about the same.
When you go into Western Louisiana, the roads get worse. So let's not use that analogy.
They do. It does get worse if you're driving. The landscape is very similar and the people are the same and all that. But I do believe it's going to stay the same. Now, I've seen reports and heard that the reinsurance marketplace, while pricing is still going to be tough, I have heard that capacity is going to open up. It is a much better reinsurance renewal season coming up on January 1 compared to January 1 of 2023. January 1, 2024 renewals are going to be better in terms of capacity, not necessarily pricing. That's going to trickle down into the marketplace eventually. And whether that trickles down by the end of the first quarter, by the end of the second quarter, I don't know. We're going to see it eventually get better throughout 2024. And I feel like early 2025, we're going to start feeling some normalcy again from whatever that new normal becomes.
Let's think like a coach. You're going into a new season. We have the opportunity to look at prospects. We have the opportunity to look at the transfer portal. If you're thinking like a coach, What does this new season look like?
I like my team because they've weathered this storm and they've been there with me. They were in the trenches with me. I like keeping my team intact. I don't really want to go to the transfer portal because I don't know what I'm getting. Maybe I'm getting some players that couldn't weather the storm very well. And it's really important that you cast that vision, you throw that growth opportunity, that 2024 is maybe not the growth year, but it is the prepping for the next wave of growth, which I believe 2025 through 2027, 2028 has the potential to be. Most hard markets, when they ended, there was a season of growth and prosperity in terms of profitability, carrier loss ratios when we came out of those hard market cycles. I'm encouraging agents to prep for that now.
Okay, college football playoffs happening this weekend. Who's going to win Sugar Bowl? Washington or Texas?
Can't say Texas because I live with Aggies, so I'm going to go with the Huskies.
I can go with Texas because Texas is going to kick some Washington booty, honey. So what about the Rose Bowl, Alabama versus Michigan?
I'm going with Bama just because I'm not going to bet against Nick Saban at this point in his career. He's proven me wrong all year.
It's going to be a close one, but I'm going Bama with you.
The world wants to see a Bama-Texas rematch. I get it, but I can't do it. My wife will not speak to me for a little while, so I'm going with the Huskies on that one.
Happy Twixtmas. Hope you are having a wonderfully successful planning week in this time between Christmas and New Year. And I'm going to leave you today with this quote from the great Hank Aaron. My motto was always to keep swinging. Whether I was in a slump or feeling badly or having trouble off the field, the only thing to do was keep swinging.
That's a really good one. Attitude's a choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
Ready to get the ball rolling with your independent agency? Learn more at IntegraAgent.com. That's IntegraAgent.com. Thank you for joining us on IA Forward. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now or learn more at IAForward.com.